All right, guys, welcome to Motorvate. This is episode number 5. Oh, I just thought about this. That's my favorite number. And one of my favorite people.
Oh, you say that to everybody.
No, I do not. No, I do not. Miss Danielle Trotta joining us today. And the title of your show is Navigate Your Success. Because I feel like if there is a woman in this industry that has had highs and lows and has navigated and not given up, it is you. And you have inspired me. Just a lot of our fun conversations. I mean, we're constantly laughing usually when we get to talk. We've been able to do some radio shows together on SiriusXM, which is always a good time. But I've just always felt like no matter what has happened to you, you're like, I'm going to figure out a way to get back on top.
100%. My mom would agree with you. And she says I need to write a book. But we'll start with this show and see how it goes.
Okay, good. We'll test it. We'll test the market.
It is, first of all, thank you for having me. And your beauty comes from the inside out, I always say. You're one of the most beautiful people and one of my favorite people. And you've been a mentor to me as one of the few women at SiriusXM. And then to join that family, you always welcomed me with open arms and kind of wrote the playbook just by the way you did your show with Dave and with Mike. Kind of gave me a playbook. I would just listen to you and be like, oh, okay, that's how you navigate a very male-dominated sport and the radio landscape as a female. So thank you for that.
Oh, my God. Well, thank you. I've never even thought about that, but thank you so much for one of the things, you and I have had a lot of conversations, and we'll talk about this in the show today, too. It's just being able to help one another because there are few of us in the garage that are female. The number's growing, and the number continues to grow, but being able to, be told no, or be told we don't want you anymore, and then get back and have a positive attitude. And there was a quote, and I think I wrote something, and I've talked about this a few times, actually, that you and I experienced kind of together some negativity from another woman in the motorsports space, in the media, that we were like, what? Why is this person not accepting us? Because when you came into the SiriusXM family, I'm like, oh, we got a TV girl now. We're good. I was like, heck yeah, people are going to take us more seriously now. This is awesome. I mean, I was like pumped up. And there was a quote, and I said this to you one day, and you were like, oh my gosh. And it was, be the woman who fixes another woman's crown without telling the world that it was crooked.
Gives me chills.
I know. Look,
I literally, goosebumps.
So
it's such a powerful quote. And be one of those women. I mean, I love that you're doing this, by the way, just to celebrate women in motorsports. And I think hopefully it can be a cautionary tale. It could be a Cliff Notes journal. It could be a guidebook for other women. But young people in general that are coming up or wherever you are in this business, it is one of the toughest and most competitive businesses, I think, in the world.
Yes.
You have to have very tough skin. There are a lot of highs and lows that I've had to navigate over the last 15 years, eat a lot of humble pie, a lot of tears, a lot of reaffirming, like, I am good at this. I have to find the right person to connect with. The right door needs to open. It's going to happen. Keep going. But there are so few women, especially in motorsports, that when one kind of turns against you or just roots for you to fail, it is almost more hurtful than a man saying you can't do it. Like, there's men that watch sports like, what does she know? I'm used to that.
Exactly.
We've all
okay.
faced that.
You just said something that I've never really thought about in that form. And it's like when the men say it, I'm kind of like, whatever.
Yeah.
Of course you say that.
Get in line.
But when a woman says it guts me.
Oh,
why does it gut us so much?
I feel like we're a sisterhood, even if it's an unspoken one, and there's a small group of us. So you would think that we would band together.
We need to.
I was at a wedding for one of the women very prominent in the NASCAR space, Caitlin Vincey, many years ago with Fox. And one of our boss's wives at the reception came up to me and she said, it's so beautiful that you're here and that you and Caitlin, you always supported Caitlin. And a lot of women I've seen in this business kind of go at each other or root for each other to fail or step over them to get to the next step. And you and Caitlin have never been that way. And so it's something I say I pride myself on, but I think you're the same way. We should all be rooting for each other to succeed. And I think there's space enough for all of us.
There's definitely space. And if you work hard and practice and learn the trade, you're going to do well. And that's one of the things that I feel that I admire about you and that I really noticed when you started doing SiriusXM. When you were on TV, I was always like, oh, well, she's beautiful. I love her voice. It's soothing. It's smart. It's not like this high pitched, because in motorsports, I kind of want this like cool, kind of competitive type vibe. And I always felt that you nailed it on TV, but I didn't realize how prepared you always are. And so when you started on SiriusXM, I'm like, I gotta up my game. No. Like I'm like jumping on, sometimes just going, I'll just who we interviewing again? Yeah. Okay. And you're like, and I was like, okay, I need to up my game a little bit when it comes to that, because I like to be more fun and make people laugh. But there is a part where you need to be taken serious, right? Yeah. And I love that you prepare for every show, and you're on 5 days a week.
It's a lot. But when you sit next to Larry Mack, you better be prepared.
That's true. I understand that.
Yeah, because he comes with receipts, as the kids say, right?
Yes.
He knows his facts. He knows his stats.
Does he still have a briefcase? Does he come?
Oh, yeah, but now it's on wheels. It's so heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because there's so many pieces of paper. He might be up to 2 roller bags now full of notes. So you have to do that one to keep up with him. It comes up in a job interview. What would you say is your biggest strength and your biggest weakness? And I remember calling my agents. I knew I had a really big job interview with a major network, not even a sports network, a major news network. And he said, this boss, she's a female. She loves to ask the question, what's your biggest weakness? So be prepared. This was only a couple of years ago. And I said, what's the best answer? And they said, well, be authentic. But I feel like watching you work, you are always over prepared. And I think you can overthink or you can over-prepare. You can bring too many notes and psych yourself out and get your facts confused and come with too many questions and really not understand the heart of what you want the interview to be. And sometimes too much of a good thing is still too much. I think there is still something about quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. But in the back of my mind, I really do want to come to the table knowing everything. If I'm interviewing you and Mike, I want to know everything about Mike's career. I want to know where he's been, what the timeline of his career was, what teams he was at, what the big wins were, what the big rivalry was, what the big wreck was, when him and Angie met, how they met, calling other people. Maybe you can give me a little side story. I don't know about them. Mm-hmm. So I do kind of I'll check your social media. I'll go to your YouTube channel. Some people say that's over preparing.
I don't think so.
But I just want to know, is because I think the more I prepare to meet you, the better I'm going to be able to navigate and tell your story. And so that's kind of how I answered that question. I ended up getting the job with that network. So I think sometimes people can say over preparing is a weakness, but I think you can make it your strength.
I think it's amazing. I'm going to be honest. I started actually preparing a little bit more after I watched you because it inspired me. You didn't tell me my crown was crooked, but I thought, I need to up my game if I'm going to keep up with, Danielle, especially when I got to do a show with you. And so and afterwards, I'm like, I just made myself better. I'm better on air because of that. So, and those are the things that I want this podcast to reach and maybe get through some of the heads of other women out there, not just women, just anybody in any industry about how you help one another. Nobody's always perfect, right? There's always room to be better. Yeah. And that's where I think for you, I'm just like going, wow, I cannot believe how Danielle, and let's go a little bit with your career, how you got involved in broadcasting and how did you even get involved in motorsports?
So I don't come from a racing background. I don't have a famous racing last name. My dad is from the Bronx, and so his first car was the New York subway. So car culture was not a big thing in my family growing up. We were stick and ball people in New York. But when I went to Emerson College in Boston and wanted to finish somewhere else. I just wasn't loving the program. Wasn't exactly what I thought, although it was a fantastic school and I had great professors. My mom and dad had relocated to Charlotte. And she's like, finish up your school down here. It's so beautiful. It's warm. It's affordable. The people are nice. I'm like, okay. So I graduated, got an internship at a local news station here in Charlotte, got a job, not on air, editing local news on the weekends for like $6 an hour.
Oh, I love it.
And would bartend at night to pay my bills. And got a job on air after several years in local news, begging for a shot. And after 3 years as the local weekend sports reporter for the CBS affiliate here, WBTV, I had a little agent that found me And he said, I'm going to send your tapes everywhere. And this was 2010. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go to ESPN. And Erin Andrews had really becoming big at that time. And she was doing, and I was like, oh, I have a stick and ball background. This is what I do. It's what I know. It's what I've played. ESPN did not call.
I have that experience too. Yeah. I was like, wait, what do you mean? I'm awesome. Why don't you want me? I don't get this.
I ended up working for them eventually, but it wasn't in 2010, but Speed called. And I was like, Speed, which is so funny because I worked 20 minutes from Speed Channel and would watch Speed Channel and would cut highlights from the truck races on Speed.
I was going to say, did you cut highlights from, because you're in Charlotte, so yeah.
Right. But we'd go to the Charlotte races, but I never put two and two together. Ever. I was never like, that's where I'm going. I loved motorsports, but I don't know. I guess I was a stick and ball girl. And so they needed a reporter for Race Hub. That was the job, not going to the track,
So the first gig that you got offered was like, hey, we're just going to put you on Race Hub where you basically got to talk NASCAR for 30 minutes.
For an hour every night. But
It was an hour.
Well, maybe it was 30 minutes back then. Burnsy was hosting. Steve Burns was the host. And I had to go to race shops Monday through Friday. So I'd go to Roush for a day and sit down with Jack or a driver. I'd go to Hendrick the next day and sit with Knaus or Letard or whoever. And, my little piece would run. That was it. And I remember I cried in the bathroom. I called my agent crying in the bathroom on the second day. And I was like, I've made a huge mistake. Get me out of my contract. I'm in over my head. I don't know the sport like I thought I did. These fans know everything. Steve and all the producers. Everyone knew NASCAR the way you and Mike know NASCAR. I didn't know NASCAR like that. I cut highlights on local news and ran a top 10 graphic, honey, and I called it the day I went to commercial. I'm like, back to ACC football and the Panthers. Next. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. And he's like, honey, you're locked in for 3 years, girl. Stick it out. Figure it out.
Okay, so you know what's so funny? Second day you were like, no, I don't want to do it. That would have been my dream job. So when I first started getting involved in NASCAR, what you did is what I didn't want to be on pit road. I did not want to, do anything like that. I wanted to go to the race shops and sit down and have kind of what we're doing right now, right? Like a real conversation. I don't want to talk about who your sponsor is. I know you have to say that, but I just want to get to know you as a driver or a car owner or a tire changer. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do. So bad.
So
I would have been like, oh my, I would have been like so excited. Yeah. I would have been like, I'll do this forever for free.
Yeah. And show me the fab shop, show me the paint shop, show me, and bring your cameras. The whole idea was to bring fans into the race shops because we're used to seeing your lifestyle at the track and on the road and during the race and pre and post. No one knew how many employees were behind the scenes, how hard these guys work, what it's like to wrap a car, what it's like, So all of these kind of odd jobs or the weekly work Monday through Friday was a fascinating peek behind the scenes. But Angie, I'm sitting down with championship winning crew chiefs. And I was at 100, in college.
That would be intimidating.
It was intimidating. Yeah. When they know everything about shims and cambers, and I'm just like, what in the hell is it? I don't know what you're talking about. Girl, that was Japanese to me. I didn't know a word. I was like, so my lifeline was I had 3 life preservers. I tossed them out, and Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond caught them. And they were my lifesavers. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. They said, no question is a dumb question. Wear us out. And I did. And I just watched Race Hub every night when I got home, beginning to end. I'd live at the studio. I'd watch all the races, obviously. And you just start to immerse yourself in it. But it took a good 2 years before I was feeling confident about myself and my knowledge base.
I was stick and ball as well.
Yes.
And I was really more in music programming than anything else. But I loved stick and ball sports and did not like NASCAR. And my first NASCAR event, I tried to convince a Chevy driver that he needed to sign autographs at a Ford dealership. And when he challenged me, I had an attitude about it. I was like, do you want the money or not, weirdo? So I had no clue. And I did not have anybody in the industry at that point because I didn't know anybody. So I called my brother-in-law and I was like, please help me understand this crazy sport. And I remember watching the first race. It was a late model race at Columbus Motor Speedway. And I'm like, who's the leader? And he's like, the number 10 car. And I'm like, well, but the 8 cars ahead, that doesn't make sense. Well, he's a lap down. I'm like, what the heck?
What does that mean?
So I was just like, what? But the people I loved so much. And I felt so invited. It was kind of funny, actually, more by the men and not in a flirty way. It was just genuine that they were so nice.
Yeah.
My challenges were women because I came in and then I met Mike, and then here I become, Mike's wife and his second wife. And so at that time, a lot of the NASCAR wives were not too friendly.
I could see that.
To me.
Yeah.
And then when I wanted to get into broadcasting, I think I felt like I had to overcome that image as well, because these people are like, oh, because she's so-and-so's wife, she got this job. And I'm like, well, actually, I begged for this job.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it.
Before you even met Mike?
Yes. And so, it's just that I'm sorry I fell in love. And you're married to somebody in the sport.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, how has that been? Do you think sometimes people are going, oh, well, she's only getting these gigs now because,
Well, people say now that I get information because of
Oh,
him.
interesting.
Like, oh, it must be really nice to be married to a team president. So that's why you always are so prepared.
No.
And I'm like,
no.
I mean, if you have a question about the truck or the car, you'll ask Mike.
Of course.
And he can tell you.
Yes.
But my husband's not telling me, how many, top 5s or top 10 somebody has, or what the inside scoop was on the charter agreement.
He's probably asking you, to be honest.
Right. Like, there's so many times he's like, what happened? And I fill him in. So it's great to have somebody there to kind of lean on, and we live the NASCAR life together.
Yes.
This is our life. And we care about the growth and the betterment of the sport. But I avoided dating someone in NASCAR like the plague. Because my first boss at Speed was a female, and that was another huge life preserver for me. Patty Wheeler, Humpy Wheeler's daughter. Humpy ran Charlotte Motor Speedway and this building we're in now for many, many years. And so Patty said, keep your nose out of the garage. And I kind of took that too literally and was scared to walk in there for many years. And it took me a while to understand. She was like, don't sleep around.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't be that girl.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
No, of course not. But,
and so that's why I said, like, it doesn't surprise me that maybe the wives, because it is a tight-knit community.
Yes.
And, you don't want to be seen doing the wrong thing or acting inappropriately or doing anything that you probably shouldn't be doing as a professional with athletes. And I think, listen, athletes hanging out with reporters is a tale as old as time. And, every sport and I have so many young women say, well, I'm covering this beat for X pro team and this guy asked me out and how do I handle it? And of course that happens.
Of course.
But I think it's real. Listen, you have to decide what's more important. I'm not going to tell, like, if you really feel like this guy is your true love and there's this amazing, like, go live your life.
Exactly.
If he's looking for a good time and you ruin your reputation,
then that's on you.
But you have a really distinct choice. And so for the first 8 years I was in the sport, I never, everyone hangs out in this part of the Lake Norman area. I lived 40 minutes away. I didn't hang out at the parties. I didn't go on the lake.
That makes a lot of sense because I didn't really know you.
Yeah.
And when I was in the garage every weekend working, I was managing drivers and Mike was still racing at that time. And I'm just now thinking about it. I never really saw you. You're right.
It was a very deliberate choice on my part. And it probably slowed my growth process in terms of knowing these guys and building relationships with drivers. But first, I wanted to establish my reputation as a hard worker and somebody that was just there for the 9 to 5 and not for the midnight and after party. And I have had this conversation with Marty Smith from ESPN, who did a fabulous job cultivating relationships with Dale Jr. and a lot of guys.
Oh, yeah.
And it was always stories about, hey, we were drinking beers and we were out back partying all night. I couldn't do that, Angie. You couldn't afford to do that.
Oh, no.
We would ruin our reputation in one night. I can't go hang out with a driver at his house because that looks very different than Marty Smith. And this is not a knock on Marty.
No, it's just truth.
It's a different dynamic when you're a woman. You just can't always do the things sometimes that your male counterparts can do if you do care about your reputation, which young women in the business, I hope you do.
Exactly.
Because that's really important to maintain. So that was important to me.
So it's crazy that you say that because I was sitting here just thinking that I actually sometimes would almost try to be like really tough and kind of like if men talk to me on pit road, because I didn't want people to think that I was flirting, because I've got a very crazy person. You know me. I'm like, woo, I love everybody. I'm hugging everybody and I'm laughing and talking and I'm loud. And so people take that as being, well, she's such a flirt. Like, look, she's flirting with all these guys. Skinner's not in Cup anymore. And look, she's on pit road during a Cup race talking to a Cup driver. And I'm going, no, I just happen to like this guy and I like his wife and I'm talking to her too. And so I caught myself almost going, I probably don't need to go in this space or be around this person at this time because people perceive it as that. And then I got older and I went, I don't really care what y'all think anymore. And the thing that's cool about it now is that I think that's what kind of the dynamic when I got to get on the air with Dave Moody on Speedway, I got to bring the more personal because I lived that. I did get to kind of do what Marty Smith did because I had my husband hold my hand while I was doing it. Right. I wasn't there alone. I was with my husband.
Yeah.
And so that was a whole different dynamic. But I will definitely say that there were times, especially when I managed Ryan Newman, because I really wanted to prove that I could manage another top NASCAR driver that wasn't my husband, because I think I was like cataloged as that. And, there were some really stupid things that people said, and there's been some things that people have said that really gutted me. And I couldn't actually tell Mike because Mike would just go kick their butt. Right? He would be like, don't talk about my wife like that. But I feel like the dynamic is definitely there where Marty Smith could go and hang out. And we love you, Marty. I don't know why we're talking about Marty so much.
It's not a knock on Marty.
Probably because Marty's the coolest cat, right? Like
coolest.
He created this awesome opportunity to hang out and get to know people.
Yes.
To get to know real people.
He's such a great personality like you. He's so outgoing and he's easy to talk to. And, he's a strong vibe. And, people want to just gravitate to him.
I wonder if people ever felt like he was flirting with, a girl. Because he's so Southern because I never felt
he's friendly.
He's friendly.
Super friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Danica felt that way. I became close with Danica when she was in the sport. And she'll tell you this now, how she always kind of walked around with this she would call a bulldog face. She was like, I did that on purpose because I was scared to be overly feminine because she didn't want to be known as a female race car driver. She wanted to be known as a race car driver. And she was very clear on that. And so I never wanted anyone to be like, she's sleeping around with everybody, get this whole kind of, she's another girl that's just in here for the wrong reasons kind of thing. So yeah, I avoided it. And then, as fate would have it, Robbie sucks me in.
Well, that's what happened with me. Yeah. I told Mike, I said, I never got my Sex in the City single experience because it's like as soon as I start working, I'm moving to Charlotte, or I thought I was. Then I met Mike and he's like, no, we're not living in Charlotte. But I always said, you took away my Sex in the City experience where I got to be single and, just be, but I didn't, I got sucked in. Same thing. I was like, ooh, I don't want to miss this ride right here. This guy's pretty special.
Go to the dictionary and look up the definition of soulmates, and I feel like it's you and Mike Skinner. You guys are
thank
so
you for saying
amazing
that,
together.
because that is one thing, and I tell Mike this all the time. I'm like, what the biggest compliment to me now, 25 years later, is when people say, you guys love each other. You guys actually have fun, and we can tell that you guys care about one another. And I'm like, that makes me so happy that people see that, because that's just the way we are. And I love that we have so much of that emotion coming out that it, everybody kind of catches on to it. But
it's palpable when you hear your show or when you see each other together.
Can you tell when we're fighting on the show?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that happens.
I can tell Mike's like, my wife's right, I'm wrong, I'm backing out of this one. Just, okay, let her be right. He's a very smart man. You've trained him well.
Thank you.
But you guys are marriage goals. I hope Robbie and I, how many years have you been married?
Well, 24 years. 25. We got married in 2000. It's very easy to keep up with. Right. So 2024, 24 years.
So I hope when we just celebrated 6. So I hope when we're at 24, we're as in love as you guys. But I agree with you when you said it got a little easier for you once you were with Mike for a while, because then guys in the garage and women, they were like, oh, it's just Mike's wife. She's not a threat. She's fine.
Exactly. She's fine.
Robbie and I have been together 10 years, married 6, but long enough now that at least, and I've been in the sport for 15 years. So I hope women know now,
yes,
I'm not after your, no. Robbie and I are great. I'm just
happy
catching up with your husband and the team because I like them and they're so much fun and we've become friends and I'm friends with the wives too. But, it's a different dynamic now that I'm with Robbie. Everyone sees you walk in the garage together, leave together. You're on the plane. I mean, everybody knows we're together. You know what I mean? It's a different dynamic now. And I remember going to my boss right when we first started dating at Fox, and I was really nervous because they did not want female reporters dating drivers.
I was going to ask you, did they kind of sit you guys down and be like, okay, here's the deal?
I can't remember if it was how I found out, whether other women told me or it was a sit down. I can't remember it being that formal. But I remember it was highly frowned upon. And not that Robbie was a driver. I mean, he was a team owner. He owned his own Xfinity team at the time. But I remember thinking like,
But he was in the garage.
yeah, right. So I was like, we're driving home from a race one night. Me and my boss are going back to the hotel, and I'm like, Steve, I have something I have to ask you. Is it okay if I date Robbie? We've been together like 6 months. And so I knew we were pretty, like, I was like,
Coming out.
I like this guy. Yeah. We're serious. And when I knew I really wanted to be with him and he started laughing, he was like, you're fine. If it was Dale Jr. or Casey Kane, we'd have a problem.
Yeah. Then it would be a media deal. You'd be in all the tabloids.
Yeah.
And yes,
I was
exactly.
like, okay, good.
It's so funny when you say that because it brought me back to when I left CBS Radio in Columbus. And I was turning in my 2-week notice. And Mike and I had been dating. And I mean, we were kind of quick. We were kind of crazy, like 6 weeks. And I'm like, fine, I'll move. Yeah, I knew. And I'd already been married and he'd been married. So it's like we both kind of said, if we're not having fun, we'll just get out because life's too short to be miserable. And I think that's why we stay so happy because we both know we're both short-fused enough that one will get out if we don't behave. But Dave Robbins, amazing radio programmer, one of my wonderful mentors. And I want to talk about mentors too. But it was so cool because I remember my female boss, I was in sales at the time because I had a contract dispute as a talent. Whatever. And so I was in sales and I went to her and I said, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. Just wanted you to know. And she's like, oh, you're going to Charlotte to go work radio in Charlotte, probably, whatever. You know, she was real crappy about it. Like instead of like, hey, you're going to a really good market. You're going to be happy. And I just kind of looked at her and I'm like, well, to be honest with you, no, I'm just, Mike and I are kind of want to try this out. And she was like, it'll never work. Oh yeah. I remember walking out of there going, that was weird. Like, I can't believe she was so rude about it. Like, I mean, why wouldn't it work? And then I went to the general manager, who was Dave Robbins, and I was like, Dave, he's like, my girl, what's going on? He's like this high energy guy. And he said, I said, I'm giving my 2 weeks. And he was like, oh my gosh, you're going to New York, aren't you? You're my superstar. You're going to New York and they're stealing you and good for you. And I'm like, nope, running off with the race car driver. And he goes, hell yeah. And instead of saying, oh, Angie, now let me give you, he was like, you go, girl.
That's awesome.
He goes, you'll figure out something to do once you get down there. I'm like, that's what I thought.
And you did.
Yeah.
You made a huge success story out of it. That woman was probably selfish on her part because she didn't want to lose you.
Well, and it's so funny because a year later, I had developed this program there for NASCAR where we had the NASCAR races on Sundays. And then we would do these like late model races. We'd bring in drivers for autograph sessions. So of course they called Mike the next year, can Mike come and do autographs? And I remember I was laughing because I looked at her and I'm like, still together.
Yeah.
Might have been a little snippy of me, I guess, if you think about it. But it was just kind of like one of those.
Proved you wrong.
Yeah, one of those moments where I was like,
See, it worked out.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about mentors because you and I share one. We got to give him some street cred when it comes to radio.
Guy.
That Dave Moody.
The Godfather.
Yes. It's so cute because sometimes I'll call him up and I'll say, Dave, what do you think about this? And he'll go, oh my gosh, you and Trotta. Both of you calling me up, and he'll laugh and he loves it.
He does. Everybody wants to feel wanted. And we actually still want his advice. I marvel at Dave's talent.
He is so good.
To go back to another mentor, Steve Burns, who was fabulous to me. Yes. One of the great things he said when I was trying to learn the sport, he's like, get you a SiriusXM subscription, keep it on 90 in your car and don't move it.
Steve said that.
Because like he did it. And he was like, think about it. You're driving 20, 30, 40 minutes to work, 34 minutes home. You're going to the grocery. You're going here. You're going there. It adds up. Like it becomes subconscious where you hear this interview, you hear that take, you hear this information, you heard that piece of breaking news, and it all just starts to kind of add up. And it was a way to accelerate my learning curve to just, if you're getting into a new sport or a new beat, whatever that is, immerse yourself in it 1,000%. I agree. Even if it's a money market job or a business beat, or I don't care, basketball, whatever it is, find every podcast that talks about it. Find every news station on SiriusXM that covers it. Find every YouTube show that exists. Watch it on television.
It's amazing what sinks in when you're not even conscious of it.
Right. And so Steve Burns was huge. I mean, in so many ways. And I miss him dearly. He was a wonderful mentor. Dave. So that's how I found Dave, was listening to Speedway and you. And that was like
cool.
It still is, but the show of record. And so I fell in love with you. I just thought you brought such a spunky, fun Angie energy. And, then there's like the curmudgeon, Dave. So you guys just had this like fabulous
It was fun.
connection and this great, listen, I don't care if it's a marriage. I don't care if it's driver, crew chief. I don't care if it's co-host. You have to have chemistry, and you guys had it oozing out of your pores together. But Dave approaches radio years later now. I've found this to be true. He approaches radio with zero fear. And talk radio, you have to have zero fear. Because there is no script, there is no teleprompter, there is no run of show.
It's
it
off
is
the cuff.
you and a microphone, and you either know your stuff or you don't. There's breaking news, you don't know when it's going to happen. There's a caller calling in with a hot take, you have no idea what that caller is going to say. You have no idea what we plan out what we want to do, but that could change on a dime.
But how many times does it change?
I feel like all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like
And sometimes it spins me out because I'm a planner, and I'm like, I really wanted to do this.
Yeah. This was such a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Like today we were covering, this was funny. Today we were covering breaking news, and another story broke while we were covering that story. And I just see my producer in Zoom having a meltdown. Like he's like, oh my God, another news. So, but Dave approaches, listen, there's controversies in racing. He's not afraid to ask the tough questions.
No.
And that's something that I really learned from him. And I hope that people that listen, pride, I want to find pride in myself in that. Like, I hope people are like, I feel like, Angie, if you're paying for SiriusXM, that's not free. You're paying to hear the question that everybody in the car wants to hear. And so I'm always thinking as a fan, like, what do people really want to know about Angie? And if you're coming off a bad race, like, Angie, was that your mistake? Like, can you admit now you were in the wrong on that one, or do you still think it was the other guy's fault? Or, Angie, we're hearing rumors. Do you think you're out of a ride next year? You have to ask the question, or you're
so good at that. When you were doing that, I was getting nervous, and I'm not even a driver.
And I don't mean it in a mean.
No, but I
hope people like respect that, because I try to be very respectful of my guests. And there are lines I will not cross. But Dave taught me that. Dave approaches radio with no fear, and you better have cojones if you're going to do talk radio. It is the most difficult job I've ever had.
I think one of the things that's so funny, because when I first started with Dave, and it was like, I think the first day, he was like, okay, I love you, right? And I go, yes. And he goes, but I'm so open. I mean, I'm an open book.
Yeah.
Right. And so he goes, just remember, anything that you say, you cannot take back. Okay. Because people will remember years. You might not remember it, but the listeners are so tuned in that they remember everything. So if you say it, you better be okay with people remembering it and stand behind it. And
what great advice.
I know. And I think he was really saying that more to me, like to not insult myself or something.
Don't say something stupid.
Yeah, don't say we all do. Exactly. And I remember I was a little intimidated at first, because I thought, how will I handle the caller that's going to call and talk really bad about my husband, right? But I mean, okay, this better not happen, you guys. Don't anybody try to be funny now and do this. But it never really happened.
Yeah,
it's almost like people separated me, which for me was like, oh wow, and that's something that I think Moody also said: separate yourself. You don't
always be Mike's wife.
Correct. And he corrected me, because Mike and I both are bad about saying we.
You say we a lot.
I know. And
but Mike, I don't know. In a way, I find that endearing.
Well, I
you
know,
guys are
and
such
that's
a
kind of
great
what
couple.
I thought. And Moody was like, you don't drive the race car. Why does Mike say we? Angie and I, we did this, we did that. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess because we're just one, because we just consider ourselves one. But I understand what Moody was saying too. Yeah. And he's like, when you're on the air, separate yourself. Now you can tell the funny stories and things like that. Right. But, be Angie Skinner. Who's Angie Skinner?
Right. That's such great advice.
Yeah.
You had to be your own woman that could stand on your own. And
I've actually this is a great story, not for me, because it was a big mistake that I made, but you were talking about Patty Wheeler. She was so cool, right? And she, was like, she's a boss lady.
Yes.
Yeah. And for Speed at the time, which if you were in motorsports and you were in broadcasting, you kind of wanted to do something with Speed.
Yeah.
And she called me one day and she's like, hey, I want you to come in. I want to talk to you. And I was like, what? Wow. I was so excited. And Mike came with me. And I don't know why, Danielle. I don't know why. Mike came with me. It's probably because we were on our way to a shop or doing something. I'm like, oh, I have this meeting with, Patty Wheeler. And so he came with me and I tanked. I I think Patty was like, why did you bring your husband to a meeting? Like, are you going to bring him to everything we do? And I think she was kind of like, okay, next.
Oh, no.
Yes. And I remember regretting it. And I felt bad. I didn't want to tell Mike, like, I think you screwed up. You screwed this up for me. Dang it.
You blew that for me, Mike. Damn you.
I know. And I'm going, so listen, ladies, if you get a job interview.
Oh my gosh.
Do not bring your husband or your girlfriend or your best friend or anybody.
Right.
Just do it on your own. To this day, I don't know why I thought that was okay. And I don't know if it's because maybe like if Mike had to go to a team meeting, I didn't go to the team meetings. I would go to the team because I was managing him. So I would talk to the marketing people or the general manager, but I wasn't putting together how the race car. I mean, I remember when Larry Mack was Mike's crew chief, I would leave. I would be like, okay, Larry, here's your coffee with 3 sugars and a lot of cream. And then I would go get ready. I'd take my shower, I'd get ready so they could have their prep time. But I'll never forget that for as long. And when you were talking about Patty, I was like going, oh God, the worst mistake I ever did.
Oh, no.
So yeah, obviously
she's all about female empowerment too. And she's Miss Independent. So yeah, that probably
did not. Yes. And I felt like going, but do you know I run the show? No. Yeah. I mean, I run this household. So let's talk about that. So one day maybe we'll all have to go have lunch together and I
would love that. And she would love that.
Share that story.
You know what's so funny is I'm become really good friends with her daughter. And so she's been traveling a lot. And I'm like, Adele, she's like, you have to come see Mom. And I haven't seen Patty in so long and I'd love to see her again. But you bring up an interesting point about not bringing somebody and what a good tip that is for anybody that's young in the business listening. I ran the internship program at my local news station towards the end. So we would always bring college kids in and interns and they'd help us on the weekends log tape or whatever. And if the parents either wrote the application letter or called me, I automatically took them out of the running.
I would have done that too.
Because I thought, like, I interned when I was in high school and I was in college. My mom wasn't doing that for me. I called the news director. I called the sports director. And I thought, now listen, I understand if they're minors, there's, legalities involved with an adult versus a minor calling to try to get a job. But if, the parent filled out the application instead of the kid, like, I was like, no, the kid should be doing this. Don't bring your mom to the interview.
Yes.
Don't have your mom do the phone interview.
Get rid of your support system.
Yes.
Get out. Like you said, don't have any fear.
Yes.
I mean, girl, I was like 15 or 16 years old on like Jackson local radio reading the obituaries because I wanted to be on the radio so bad.
Right.
So I was like, I didn't care. And I don't even think I asked my mom. I think I just drove over there and they said, here, if you want to be on air, you can read the obituaries. And I was like, okay,
I'll take it. And that was like the biggest deal to you then.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, by the time you're 17 or 18, you should be doing your own legwork. That was my thing. I was like, dude, you can vote.
Oh, yeah.
You can go to war.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do your own job interview.
And you can also pay your own phone bill. I get so mad at my friends. They're like, oh, well, I still pay my kids' phone bill and their insurance. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Like,
make them do it.
Yes.
Get a side job. Get a little night job.
That just segues into another thing, and that's just hard work, right? And I think one of the things that we need to express to especially the younger folks coming up right now, if you're going to work in motorsports, in broadcasting, it's not a 9-to-5 job.
No.
It's a whenever news breaks.
Get ready to miss all of your friends' weddings. Get ready to work all the holidays.
Exactly.
Like, you're reading obituaries. I'm working the midnight shift. I'm sure you worked countless weekends.
Oh, yes.
I mean, aside from Mike racing on weekends, but, prior to, you were working the shift no one else wanted to. I worked every holiday because my boss, who was the main sports anchor, he earned that. He had been there forever. Yeah. He didn't work Thanksgiving. He didn't work Christmas. Yeah. He did not work New Year's Eve. He did not work Easter. I worked sick. One time I was like dying in bed with the flu and he's like, I'm not coming in. So I'm barfing. Like, we had a desk like this and I had a trash can and commercial break. I'm like puking and then I like come back on camera and the next out of commercial. Like, yeah, get ready to miss a lot of your friends and family.
It pays off in the end.
It does.
And I think that's the thing is be willing to put your time in and the hours in.
Yeah.
And be humble about it.
Yeah.
And not have an attitude about it. Because that's another thing. Anytime I'm around people that have an attitude, like, I've never, I think it was this week, I was pulling into Chick-fil-A and this poor little guy, he's sitting there with his little iPad. And right when I pull up, he's like rolling his eyes, like, oh gosh, and he goes, how are you? And I go, well, better than you. Because
Good for you.
and he kind of looked at me funny, and I was like, listen, I'm just messing with you. But I mean, it kind of made me feel weird. Like I felt like, okay, I don't want my chicken anymore. I don't need it anyways.
He's the one in customer service.
Yeah,
Turn that frown upside down. Yeah. I think you always set the tone, though, in a really great, fun way. And you're fun to be around. And I think everyone on the team feeds off your vibe. I do whenever you're in the room and, on those big days in Daytona when we're all together. And Angie's always the life of the party. And she's like our den mom. And you're so sweet, but you set the tone. And when you do a daily show, like Larry and I do 5 days a week,
it's a lot.
15 hours, almost every single day of the year except for weekends, you can't log on. And Mike and Pete, I used to be bad about this because I'm just not a morning person. And we don't do crosstalk anymore. But back when we did, Mike's like, did you just wake up? And I realized, like, I don't know, sometimes the monotony of a daily show, you can just log in and be like, hey, guys.
Mm-hmm.
But in TV and radio, you can't have bad days. You can't have bad days on air. You've got it every day. Even if you just got in a terrible fight with my husband.
You have to be an actor.
5 minutes later, hi.
Exactly.
Welcome in. But you know what? You bring up a really great point. You need to be like that with your teammates too. Even when you guys are not on air, log in with a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm.
Log in and ask other people how they're doing. Larry's so great about what you got going on this week, girl. What you gonna do this weekend? In commercial, just chit chat. Like,
isn't it funny how little things like that?
Yes.
I mean, Dave and I used to dance. Like we used to be, because we'd be in the studio together, and so when the music would come on, or when you do the rejoin, and they always play like a fun song, we'd be like, we were like, you're totally geeks, and then we just get laughing, but it got our energy up.
I do that every day when we come back from break. How they play fun music?
Yes.
And I gave Pat like a curated a playlist, and I'm doing that every day. Like I'm always dancing in the chair, and like I think it like keeps people's. Listen, they're long shows.
Yes.
You got to keep yourself and the entire team upbeat, but show up with a positive attitude is such a great. Yeah.
I want to bring this up, and this is me doing my okay, I got to ask one tough question.
Yeah.
Because I want to find out how you had the resilience and the determination, because you were on TV, you're working with Speed, then you go to Fox.
Blew up.
And then it blew up. Like what? They just call you and they say, okay, we're making changes? Or, I mean, how does that even happen? And then
when I left?
Yeah.
I think, so I was, contract. I think my contracts were 3-year cycles. So I was coming to the end of my contract, and everything did change in 2014 when we went from Speed to FS1. Everything just became bigger, right?
Okay.
Because now you're Fox Sports 1.
Yeah.
And it's not your little Charlotte studio. Now it's like LA is running everything. And it's like big bosses who cover big stuff like NFL on Fox. And there's a lot of great stuff that came along when we were FS1. Our shows became bigger. Our audiences grew. The ratings went through the roof. More money came in. Our sets got better. Like it got big. Like you were like, wow, this is cool. Like, Speed was like this niche channel. Fox Sports 1 was like ESPN. That's what it was created to rival. So we were doing a lot of shows, a lot of big stuff. And so there was crossovers with other shows and great opportunities came. And I think like, I was like, you know what? I don't want to get pigeonholed, to be honest, as the motorsports girl.
Really?
We were doing a ton of stick and ball stuff at Fox Sports 1. And I wanted to sideline for Fox. I wanted to do college basketball. I wanted all these other, because that was kind of who I was in a
that's
previous
cool. I never
life.
knew that about you.
So I was like, oh, well, I want to get back to college sports, and I want to get back to the NFL and the NBA. And I had loved those jobs previous to Speed and Fox. So I looked for those opportunities, and I did a little bit, but I wanted to do more. And I remember one boss pulled me aside one day because I kind of made my voice loud. Like the voice in the back of my head was getting louder. Like there's more out there.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I had a really sweet gig doing what I was doing with NASCAR.
Like I said, you had my dream gig, girl. I was
it was big. And because at that point I was doing Cup pre-race, Xfinity pre-race, Race Hub, features.
A lot.
So yeah. And I remember one of my bosses pulled me aside. He's like, you're nuts. He's like, I wouldn't go down this road. And I remember that was like such a pivotal moment for me. And I wonder now, like, should I have listened? And I had a really great gig and I walked away from it. They didn't force me out. They didn't fire me. I asked if I could do more stick and ball, and they just didn't have any openings. There's only so many sideline opportunities. There's only so many football games. And all those girls and guys had those gigs wrapped up on contracts, and it was a timing issue. And so I decided to leave and jumped off the biggest, best cruise ship I had ever been on with no life raft. And I was floating in the ocean by myself for years trying to figure it out. And still, to be honest, trying to replicate that level of money and success. It's been a long 7 to 8 years.
But I guess I was impressed because I didn't know that whole story. That's the whole time, the first time we've ever really just kind of dove into that. And then all of a sudden you get on the air with SiriusXM.
Yes.
And then I was like, wait a minute. She's not in Charlotte? They're like, no, she's in Boston. And so you pack your bags, you go get the stick and ball gig again, but you moved to Boston.
I had to move to Boston to get it. Yeah.
And she's married, you guys. It's not like she's single. Like, she's married, had to move to Boston. So now you're going back and forth. How in the heck?
Yeah.
I think that's cool because you went after what you wanted. But
yeah. So that was great to get that phone call. And NBC Sports was amazing, and covering sports in Boston was incredible. And that's why Robbie supported it, because he was like, 1, it's your dream. 2, this is an opportunity you can't turn away. I mean, I think there was like 27 girls that auditioned, and I got it. So he was like, you can't say no. And the money was not great compared to what I was making. But he was like, it's the opportunity. You've got to go do this. And it was hard, especially because he was working for Penske at the time. So I'm off weekends. He's at the track on weekends. So it was just like, I hosted a night show. He was asleep by the time I got off, which was midnight. Ugh. I was sleeping when he got up at 6 a.m. to go to Penske. So it was like 2 years of just not, like, I think when I flew home to get married, I hadn't seen him in maybe 2 or 3 months before our wedding. Like, it was, he's like, what is this, a mail or bride situation? I feel like I don't even know what you look like anymore.
Like, hey girl, hey.
I forgot. So that was really hard. But then NASCAR and NBC called, and SiriusXM called. And so other opportunities started coming, and it was great. And I think there were conversations that happened. I think it would have worked out really, really well with NASCAR on NBC because I did a show with them in 2019, and this little thing called COVID hit.
Oh,
and
oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there was a plan in place. And
then another setback. And here you are still looking at me smiling, and you're still happy to be. See, this is the thing. That's what I'm like, navigate your success. You could have been so bummed. You could very easily just sit at home.
Yeah.
And go to the races with Robbie.
Yeah. And that's what I did, and cried and ate too much and drank too much. And trust me, it's okay. And you need to have your people.
Yeah.
But and you were one of those people. Dave has been one of those people. You have to have those people on days where you don't believe in yourself, I always believed in myself, but when doors wouldn't open, and they opened for all these other women who I was like, well, I can do that.
Yeah. I do that too. I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I'm like, why didn't I get it? Why won't they call me? Like, I still don't even have an agent. I can't get a damn agent. It's so funny, you know.
And you're so good.
But I've just never. And I thought, well, maybe there's a reason for it, right? And I've never really went after it. But the same thing. Sometimes you're going, oh, maybe I'm just not asking. I just talked to Jamie Little, or in episode 4, and she's like, who's the top boss? All right, well, I'm calling that guy,
right? And
I'm like, I need those guts. Yeah. Right? I need that. That.
Yeah, you do. Because it's so competitive. But yeah, you just like, Angie, you're really good at what you do. Like, really, really good at what you do. And you need, I'm sure you have your people on those days where you just doubt yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You need those people.
Yes.
And you'll call, or you'll like, is it me? Like, am I not that good? Mm-hmm. Is that why it's not happening? Just tell me. Just freaking tell me.
Am I out of touch now? Am I annoying?
Yeah.
Or what's going on?
What is it? Yeah. Should I pivot?
Oh, girl, I lost a gig this week or this year doing voiceover work. And I love to do voiceover work because
you're so good.
You can be funny, different, you can act. But it was promotional. And the funny thing is, I still have to work for this company in sales and that's what I struggle with, because everybody wants to get me in sales. And I'm like, I don't want to just do sales. I want to do something creative. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because you know why? Nobody asked me. So I'm like, well, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Honestly, Angie, I think that's why the Lord, like, I feel like the Lord has got, like, through my last 8 years, which have been tough, that's been another strength for me, that I know he will open and shut doors as he sees fit. And when the doors keep shutting, for me, it was my message that I was hearing from him it was because you still have more work to do on yourself. That way, when I open that big door, you can walk through and be ready. You have to be more humble. You have to be kind. You have to have discipline. Like, there were things in my life that I needed to clean up. Like, I've quit drinking. Like, there were things that I needed to check on myself. Yeah. And so now I know when that big door opens, I am so much of a better person and a broadcaster than I was when I left. Like, I watched my tape from Fox and the other day and I laugh. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I thought people were like, you were really good. I'm like, I'm so much better now. But I had to do a lot of work and I'd take a lot of jobs that I did not want to take, but they all taught me something and it all helped me grow as a broadcaster and as a person, and be more appreciative.
Here's something funny about perspectives, and sometimes when you don't realize things that you're doing that people recognize, because I think what you're doing now with the TV show that you were doing.
Yeah, with Meekum. You talked to Chris Jacobs.
Yes. Yeah. And then the Fox, the car show, my dream car. I mean, and I'm in my mind, that's a bigger level than what you were doing before. And I think it's kind of cooler because it's like, oh my gosh, you're more well-rounded. You're not just stuck in motorsports, which kind of was your goal when you left to begin with, right? You're still in the automotive world.
Yeah.
But you're branching out and you're doing so many different things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's cool because I think that's bigger than maybe when you were hosting all those shows for FS1.
Right.
Do you realize that, girl?
It's a great perspective. I have to remind you know what it was, because the paycheck wasn't there. It wasn't associated with the paycheck because I think the industry really happened to change. Like, that's when a lot of cord cutting happened and streaming started to come in. And so that's when my agents were like, you're just a victim of, we've never had another client with more horrible timing. But with the cord cutting, you know this too, budgets changed and rollbacks happened. And so you used to make buku bucks doing this, and now you're not. The paychecks are not the same. And so I always kind of, maybe this was an error of mine, but I didn't equate my success with doing some of those jobs because I wasn't making nearly the amount of money. But they were hugely rewarding, and I did learn a lot. And I always wanted to do like episodic TV. Like, I love HGTV.
Me too.
And so I was like,
that would be
my
dream.
One of those. Yeah. And so that's what my dream car was. I mean, it was on Fox Business, not HG, but it was kind of one of those episodic TV. I'd only done live TV. Holy crap, y'all. Episodic TV is the hardest job I've ever had. Like, you spend weeks, if not months, on one freaking episode. It takes so much time. You work I've never worked harder in my life, ever. And the pay was terrible. And people loved that show. It was such a hit.
Because for me, I'm thinking, she's killing it.
But like, the ratings were great. And I was killing, I mean, like, Fox was happy. Everyone was happy. But holy crap, they were hard. Like, I thought Race Hub was a long day. That ain't nothing compared to 10 episodes in one season. And then they order more episodes because the show does great. So you're doing more work for it's like,
and you guys got to remember, she's doing this and hosting
5 days a week.
5 days a week on SiriusXM.
I would bring my gear and
having to watch all the NASCAR races because you got to keep up with everything. I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And even now with Meekum, thank God we're like Thursday through Saturday, and then I'll take a 5 o'clock plane home Sunday just so I get home in time to watch the Cup race, because that kind of sets up your whole week on Sirius.
It does.
And SiriusXM, like, I have to be honest, they've been like amazing. Like, I thought Sirius was going to be my side hustle, which is another tip to youngins. Like, have your job, but then have your side hustle.
Yes, ma'am.
Have your radio job, have your sales job, have your radio job and your podcast.
Always have something going on in the background.
Go into different pots. And I've had network bosses say, I wanted a girl like J-Lo. She can sing, act, dance, the triple threat. Like, I want talent that has done radio, TV, and podcast. And if you're doing them all currently, even better. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go. That's when I was at Fox, and I was like, all right, I'm on TV. I'll call Daniel Norwood and see if I can fill in on SiriusXM.
Yeah.
And then I hopped on a podcast with Daryl Mott, and then I did Corey LaJoy Stacking Pennies pod. So I'm always trying to keep my hands, because this is multimedia now, right?
It is.
It's different.
I was just doing a proposal today, and I was like, okay, I want the opening page to say, I have many layers.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I have all these things that I can help activate your brand and be an ambassador, but I can do it on radio, I can do it on a podcast, I can do it on social media, I can MC an event, I mean, I can do voiceover. What do you want?
That's your superpower.
Yeah.
And I feel like that makes you so much more valuable. Here's the thing, you have to figure out what makes you different. Because there's a lot of Danielles, there's a lot of Angies, there's a million girls that want to be on TV or want to be on radio. So whatever this boss is, he's going to be looking at a million of resume tapes or like, how do you stand out? And I think exactly what you just said, like, And I've been doing this lately. Like, I can add added value here, here, and here. Anything that you can do to try to separate yourself and find added value, whether that's your social media following, whether that's saying, I'll post for you, or I can generate sales.
Being
I
a
can bring
connector, I can
sponsors.
introduce you to people,
Right.
to help build.
Whatever that is, you have to find a way to not just be another resume tape. You have to find a way. And now, Angie, it's so different. Like, I had to slug it out in local news and like make my tape when everyone else went home and shoot little stand-ups because there was no social media.
I'm going to show you my stand-ups from college, but we will have to it'll have to be in the morning and drinking coffee, and you're going to have to be on the other side of the table because you will spit coffee on me laughing at how awful I looked, and the bloopers. My blooper reel was epic. So I will share that with you one day. Unfortunately, I can't believe how fast these go.
I know.
It's not enough time, but I got to do one quick thing. Got to do the rearview mirror.
Okay.
We've already shared so much, but maybe your biggest rearview mirror. Looking back in the rearview mirror, what is one thing that you might have done different, or just, hey, I'm going to tell all the folks out there listening right now, I made the mistake, but I don't want you to make it.
I probably, we talked about different forks in the road that I faced, but I think too, the other thing is like, I'm a highly emotional person. I pour my heart into my work and I want everything to be really perfect. And I have a way of that I see the show to be. And sometimes, everybody at the table, their voice matters too. Even if you have a higher television IQ, or even if you think your way is better, or I know this is a better way to tell the story, allow other people to do it their way too.
Good advice.
Yeah. Make sure that it's a collaboration. And you're not just telling people the right way to do it. And it's okay to be a boss lady. Like, don't get me wrong. It's okay to have a strong voice, and it's okay to be really good at what you do and have confidence in your skill set, but bring other people with you. And I think the way to do that is to allow them to have their voice be heard and be creative with them and make it a collaboration. They'll learn faster than if you tell them. Like, I know, Angie, I know the way to do this podcast is this way is better.
Listen to me.
Yeah. Let Angie come to the table and do it her way. And you know what? You might learn a darn thing or two. So be really open, because you're going to work with people that come from all different walks of life. And you may go, they are crazy. That is not a better way to do it. Try it. Be open. And I think you can find a way to all live together in a very highly creative and competitive space. I think when everybody's open to succeeding and failing together, all bringing their own ideas to the table. And I think sometimes I was like, my way is the best way. And it is not always the best way.
That's good advice. I need to put that on record and play and hear it every morning while I'm sipping my coffee.
Mike's like, Angie, did you hear that?
Yeah, I know. Actually, I was just sitting imagining Mike going, are you listening, Angie? Yeah. Are you? Because I always tell him, listen when we're on the air. Listen to what they're saying. Listen,
Yeah.
But so, okay, and then we got to be positive. Final bit here. Okay. Looking out front, looking out the windshield.
Yeah.
What's next? What's going on?
Some things that probably are too soon to announce, but I'm super excited about.
Cliffhanger, I like it.
Yeah,
I like where you're going here.
Yeah, but you'll see more of me.
Okay.
But I'm not, that's not meaning that I'm leaving SiriusXM. I'm super excited to stay with SiriusXM. Good. So it'll be adding to stuff I'm already doing.
Added value, Danielle Trotta.
Added value. Yeah, exactly. So there are, if just don't ever stop believing in yourself and your dream. If like God's not removing this dream from your heart, he's doing it for a reason. It's because there's more out there for you. But if you give up, you will never find it. So don't give up. You can, trust me, I have been at the lowest of the low. If I can climb back up, you can too. So you will make it, and you'll hear more. Hopefully we can share coffee or whatever and talk about our plans.
I'm just sitting here going, I could just sit here for another hour, which we will do this again, obviously.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too.
You're amazing.
Oh, I think you're so amazing. So thank you for creating this. This is such a great space.
Yes. And like I said, navigating success. And girl, you have done it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys, thanks for tuning in, listening. Don't forget, wherever you get your podcasts, subscribe, give us a few comments. And until then, keep motivated.